Okay, I want to start off by giving all praises to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Rakak, Kwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who teach the Bible in 100% truth. And Shalom to the hopeful elect of the 12 tribes of Israel spread across the earth, starting with the Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans in the land of North Central South America, as well as the speckled bird spread across the earth. Shalom to you. So this is a quick one relating to the topic of World War Three. Back again with talk of prophecy, and I've gone into the fact many times of how we're expecting World War Three to actually kick off according to the scriptures. Jeremiah chapter 49, the least of the flock shall draw them out, and I've explained, gone into the fact that the small hats in the land at the minute, the Zionist state of the small hats, and they will, they're known as the least of the flock according to the scriptures, and so they will draw out all these other nations around the earth into the third woe, World War Three. And so obviously I've explained, you've got to keep an eye on these particular people, and I've also gone into the fact that their biggest issue, their biggest problem as a nation, as a military power, their biggest problem is the nation of Iran, which is pretty much next door to them. So I've gone into the fact that you've got to look at that particular situation and watch that to see what develops from there. And obviously the way you see things escalate in that particular situation will probably give you a good idea as to how close we're getting to World War Three. You've got the situation at the minute with Russia and Ukraine, and a lot of people keep saying, this is, they keep looking at it as if this situation here will cause World War Three. But obviously, as I've explained, the scriptures say that Russia will be a big player in World War Three, and especially in the destruction of America, Babylon the Great. Yet I keep explaining that this is not actually what's happening over there is not going to be the thing that sparks it off into World War Three. Obviously, what's happening in there does back up, prophecy. It does go into prophecy that's being fulfilled in, I believe it's Ezekiel chapter 38. The fact that Russia are trying to revert back to that original USSR mentality and take back, particular control or power in the surrounding nations that it used to have. And so that's what's being fulfilled in that particular situation there. Obviously, that's having a knock-on effect with the world economy and so on and so forth, which then obviously goes into propelling forward the fulfillment of other particular prophecies. But the minute we're going to stick to this third woe, World War Three. And so going back to the situation with Iran and their next door neighbors, the small hats, we're looking at that. And on a few occasions, I've brought out different bits of information, and hopefully, Lord willing, those of you that are listening, link it together and understand, where we're going with this particular scenario. But I came across this particular article just now, this morning, and I believe it's, I'm not sure, let me see, November the 26th. Is that today? Yeah, that's today. So, so this, as you can see, as the world fixates on Ukraine, another war is brewing in the Middle East. And this article does a really good job of bringing all the different points and issues together under one article. And by going through it, you can quite clearly see how close that situation between Iran and the small hats is to escalating into actual war, which will, ultimately involve the US. Undoubtedly, when that situation occurs, the US will have to get involved. And this article sort of brings all the different points together, and it does an excellent job of pretty much showing you how close it is. And going through it's almost at a point where Yahweh Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, if Yahweh wanted to for World War III to kick off tonight, it pretty much could through this situation. All it takes is a spirit upon one of these leaders to give him a change of, not even a change of heart, just to accelerate the emotions within himself to make it happen. And by going through this article, we can sort of see how close it is. Now, this is inews.co.uk. I believe I came across this as a news article. I didn't actually go to this particular site. I just came across one of the headlines, clicked on it, as you do on your iPhone. So with that, it drew me back to this particular article here. It says, the failure to agree a nuclear deal is only one of a series of separate and unrelated events that have heated up the Iran crisis over the last 2 months. So this is what it's doing. It's going to go into the situation and how it's escalated, particularly over the last 2 months. And like I say, that's going to give you a good understanding of timeline and how close we are to the third woe. Obviously, we have the fulfillment of the MOTB to take place first. But yet again, the things are starting to be put in place for that particular prophecy to happen too. So, that could quite easily happen next year in the year 2023. And looking at this situation here, and you'll understand that the Most High has all the players and all the reasonings and all the tools in place for World War III to kick off. It's pretty much at boiling point now, and what he's doing, he's sort of letting it simmer at a particular point, and it flared up, around the time that you had the assassination of the Iranian general. It heated up over then, and it obviously has cooled off since that particular time. But now, obviously, it's boiling and bubbling up again since the last 2 months. And so, what you can see is the Most High is, he's got it at a point where he can just make this thing explode at any point. All he needs to make happen is the fulfillment of the MOTB, and then this thing is ready to kick off in the background. And so, I'm going to go into it now, and we'll see. Lord willing, you get an understanding of what I'm trying to explain. I've been up all night and I haven't had much sleep, so if I'm stuttering on my words, just forgive me. And it says here, as war rages in Ukraine, another conflict is ready to explode in the Middle East as the US and its allies confront Iran over its nuclear program, a supply of drones to Russia, and suppression of anti-government protests. If the US or Israel were to attack the main Iranian nuclear facility producing weapons-grade nuclear fuel, okay, so this is what it's all about. These nuclear facilities in Iran, they pretty much, the whole thing's about producing nuclear fuel. Now, by producing nuclear fuel, you can use that for different things, but you have to then adapt it in different ways and have it in different grades. So, you could have it, just like petrol. You have petrol is made into one particular grade to go into a car, but then it's made into a different type of grade to go into say a rocket booster. And so with nuclear fuel, it's the same thing. So you can have one type of grade which helps with producing energy in terms of electricity and so on and so forth, or you can adapt that fuel and make it into a different grade in order to use it to fire ICBMs. And so this is what the whole issue is with the Western world and what Iran are doing in these nuclear plants. To bring it down to one particular point, to make it simple to understand, that's the big problem. You're making nuclear fuel, that's cool if you're going to use it, make it in a certain way and use it for energy. But if you're going to function in lights and stuff like that, but if you're going to make it in a different grade, you're able to use that for ICBMs, and that scares us. This is the whole issue from the West. It says Iran would start again. Sorry, it says if the US or Israel were to attack the main Iranian nuclear facility producing weapons-grade nuclear fuel, Iran would most likely retaliate by using its drone and missile arsenal to close the Strait of Hormuz at the mouth of the Gulf, through which tankers daily carry almost a fifth of the world's oil and gas. Okay, so what they're saying is, if the US and Israel were to attack, obviously, Iran for that particular fact of, producing weapons grade nuclear fuel, they could easily retaliate by sending drones to the Strait of Hormuz, the mouth of the Gulf. Now, this is important because this is where a lot of shipping tankers travel through, so Iran's way of retaliating to, any type of attack that may come in from Iran and Israel and the US, they may not necessarily attack directly back, but they could attack the Strait of Hormuz at the mouth of the Gulf and affect shipping and trade and supply chain. And it says here, through which tankers daily carry almost a fifth of the world's oil and gas. So, not only will that affect the energy situation in terms of fuel and getting around, it'll also then affect the shelves and the foods, because you'll have less trucks to transport food, as we've seen obviously occurring with Ukraine. So the confrontation escalated sharply this week when Iran announced that it intended to make nuclear bomb grade nuclear fuel at its Fordow plant, located inside a mountain, to protect it from bomb and missile attack. Okay, so they've literally announced it this week. They said they've come out and announced they're make near bomb grade nuclear fuel. So they said, look, we're changing the grade of the fuel we're making. It's not quite at the level of bomb grade, but it's just below it, and that's an issue. So that's why it's saying this confrontation has escalated sharply. It says Iran decided to ramp up its nuclear program after the failure of talks to revive the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the JCPOA, nuclear deal agreed in 2015 by Barack Obama, but denounced and dropped 3 years later by Trump. So, the fact that they failed to revive these talks, Iran are just ramping up the production on their nuclear program, upping the grade of the fuel, taking it closer to bomb grade level, and escalating crisis. So what it does now, this article just breaks it down into certain sections, if you like, little headlines: escalating crisis, resurrecting the nuclear deal, a drone superpower, so tanker traffic from the Gulf. Now, these are the things I just explained. So I'll try and read through it as quick as I can, just to give you some brief understanding on it. Because, if you can understand this on a simple term, then it makes it easier for you to watch yourself when you're watching this situation escalate. At the heart of the agreement was a far-reaching reduction in economic sanctions on Iran in return for international monitoring of a reduced Iranian nuclear program, which Israeli and Western leaders say is aimed at producing a nuclear bomb. And so this is what it is. The West are saying, look, you're producing this nuclear energy. Let us come in and, just test it out. Just test you're not, taking it to that bomb grade level. And in return, we'll reduce these sanctions that we've put on you in terms of trade. That's the heart of the agreement that they were trying to get to. It says the escalating crisis is a resumption of the confrontation 3 years ago between the US and Israel on the one side and Iran on the other, that almost led to war. Under pressure from sanctions and threatened by military assault, Iran launched a highly successful drone and missile attack on Saudi oil facilities that briefly cut its oil output by half. Iran was held responsible for explosions damaging oil tankers anchored at the mouth of the Gulf and for guerrilla actions against US troops in Iraq. So these these are the things that they're kind of what the US are doing. They're building up at that point they were building up a little list. They were saying, they were responsible for damaging these oil tankers, and they were also attacking US troops that were based in Iraq. You've got these people in Iran, some of which want to see the end of America as much as the elect of the nation of Israel do. And so the fact that you've got American soldiers who've flown all the way from America to Iraq for whatever mission that was supposed to be for, that's pretty much next door to them. So they saw that as a good excuse to go out and cut down an American, basically. So you had these guerrilla groups, if you like, of Iranians going into Iraq just to take out US troops, just for the hell of it. So that's something that was going on. At the same time, Iran were held responsible for explosions, damaging oil tankers at the mouth of the Gulf. So Trump retaliated by ordering the assassination of General Salami. So that's, you probably remember that. It says, in charge of covert Iranian operations abroad, who was killed in a drone strike in early 2020. So that's what the US were retaliating to. They're retaliating to these guerrilla groups, just going out for the hell of it, taking out American soldiers in Iraq just because they're next door. They've come all that way, and obviously for the damage they've done at the mouth of the Gulf, which obviously messed up the Saudi Arabian oil flow. It says, resurrecting the nuclear deal, the US-Iran military conflict came close to an all-out war, but de-escalated sharply with the replacement of the aggressively anti-Iranian Trump by President Joe Biden. So the fact that, Trump came out of power immediately de-escalated the situation. Biden, who reopened negotiations for resurrecting the nuclear deal. Attention was diverted away from Iran by the pandemic, the US competition with China, and the war in Ukraine. So these are the things that were going on, pretty much diverted attention away from America. America have got all these other issues, these three other issues going on. So they're looking at Iran less. While they're looking at Iran less, Iran just went back to work, into their little mountain retreat, bomb-proof nuclear base, and just carried on, up in the grade of their nuclear fuel. They said, all right, cool, yeah, you go and concentrate on those other things. We will just get back to work. And obviously now, the failure of the nuclear deal, attention is coming back towards Iran. It says, as recently as September, Iran appeared close to a new agreement on the JCPOA, but asked for guarantees that the US would not unilaterally withdraw again. Now, what the situation with that is Iran is saying, look, if we get into a peace deal, with you, or a nuclear agreement deal, for example, with you, with America, we want some sort of agreement that you're not going to pull out later on down the line. Because once you get into that agreement and America reduce the sanctions off you, let you trade more, let you build as a nation financially, once they agree to do that, you then have to agree to downgrade your nuclear program. Now, once you start reversing it and you make yourself weaker, it's then easy for the US to pull out of the deal and say, well, we don't want to be part of the deal. We're going to slap the sanctions back on you just because we don't like you. And, this is what America do. They manipulate and control the markets. So if Iran were to de-escalate it and pretty much weaken themselves, America just pull out. And then how long would it take Iran to catch back up? Another 20, 25 years to catch up all that, stuff that they dismantled or threw away. They threw it in the bin. So this is the situation. This is why they can't make an agreement, because America aren't agreeing to that. And the fact that that is happening shows you that, the scriptures say that America is the hammer of the whole earth. These are the people that cause all the wars going on around at the minute. However they do it, they do it. And in this situation, I'm showing you that they could easily turn up to that agreement and say, you downgrade your nuclear program and we'll agree to never pulling out again. However they do it and get them to, I don't know, what do they do? Hand on their heart? I don't know. How do they prove that I'll stick to this? But however they're going to do it, you'd expect them to do it. And then that would bring peace because Iran would downgrade their thing. And according to democracy, everything will be cool. We've got bombs to protect the world, and Iran and all these aggressors don't. So everything's cool, but we're letting you trade. Everything will be cool. But America go to these talks, ask them to downgrade, but don't want to agree to sticking to the deal long term. And that is the killer. See, they won't come out in the mainstream media and just say, "Oh, by the way, yeah, this is what we've done. We could have done that, but we decided not to, and we'll see where it goes." Because people will be in uproar, and this is part of the lies and the manipulation of the media on the mind and the influence of the population. Okay, so carrying on here, it says, yet the failure to agree a nuclear deal is only one of a series of separate and unrelated events that have heated up the Iran crisis over the last 2 months, making it more explosive than ever. It says Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, had been in the forefront under Trump, pressing for an attack on Iranian nuclear plant. After decisively winning a general election on November the 1st, he is returning to power in Jerusalem at the head of the most hawkish and right-wing government in Israel's history. I mean, they're telling you right there, the most hawkish and right-wing government in Israel's history is, as of November the 1st, this month, what we're talking 26, 25 days ago, as of then, Benjamin Netanyahu is back in power of that particular government. And, as it says here, previously he was originally pressing on Trump for, to come on, let's go into Iran, let's kick down that door. That's something else that I mentioned probably about 3-4 weeks ago. I brought out a little clip of Benjamin Netanyahu. I believe it was before that election took place. And that's one of the things that he was speaking during his campaign. That was one of his things to get him re-elected, and now he's been re-elected. What he's going to do is going to go back to America and say, we need to make this happen. And obviously there's a failure on America's part with the deal because they're failing to say we'll stick to this deal long term. So, the war's on the horizon. The problem with America at the minute is they just got their eyes fixed on Ukraine and the MOTB and a few other things. So they're not quite fully concentrating on it just yet. It says always an opponent of the JCPOA, talk about Benjamin Netanyahu, he is likely to put pressure on the US for military action against Iran. Israel and the US have both reportedly trained for an airstrike against Iran, and Netanyahu came close to ordering one. Okay, so that's showing you that previously they've come close, and at the minute is that closeness is coming back. It's boiling up again. You've got Netanyahu back in power, and there's obviously issues just occurring. Moving on, it says a drone superpower. It says two other coincidental developments, okay, are further poisoning relations between Tehran and Washington. Okay, so we're going to go into some more details. It says, faced with the air superiority of the US and its allies in the Gulf, Iran turned itself into what has been described as a drone superpower. But the world only took on board the effectiveness of these cheap, precision-guided missiles when Iran exported them to Russia for use against Ukraine. Since October, they have partly destroyed Ukraine's electrical system, depriving much of the country of heat and light. The surprise emergence of Iran as a significant player in the Ukraine war soured even further. If that were possible, its already toxic relations with the West. Iran, it says here that Iran are being described as a drone superpower. And what they've clocked is that if you build drones and you send them over the border to do damage to whatever you want, there's not a great deal of heat being given off by these particular drones. Now, when you have a missile defense system, they lock onto heat. So, you can have a missile defense system. I think I went into that before. Israel, the nation of Israel at the minute, they have a thing called the Iron Dome, which is a missile defense system. And what it will do, it'll detect the heat of these missiles and where they're traveling, and it will lock onto them and destroy them before they actually hit a target. And this is how most defense system works. And with a drone, it doesn't work because there's no heat. So what are you locking onto? What are you tracking? So you can take 500 drones and just fly them over the border in the middle of the night, all black, no flashing lights, and just send them over the border and just to drop an explosive on a particular spot. And like you said, they've used it to destroy the electrical system of Ukraine. So any particular major power plants or major points, they've pretty much just gone there, just dropped one or two bombs here and there, destroyed the buildings, bang, electricity's gone. It's very simple. You haven't lost one soldier in that process by doing it. So moving on, yes, a final ingredient supercharging the growing crisis is the protest movement in Iran, which shows no signs of dying away, despite extreme repression leading to the killing of 305 protesters, including 41 children, according to the Amnesty International. The protests are more broadly based than in the past, and the collective punishment of protesters serves only to produce more martyrs. The refusal of the Iranian football team to sing their national anthem in Qatar shows extent and determination of the opposition. So with these protesters, this is causing an issue with the Iranian government because they're seeing it as influence from the West. And ultimately, that's a problem to them. So that, makes them more angry against the West, makes them, more determined to do what they're doing, build this weapons grade nuclear fuel. And at the same time, if the US and the little hats were to attack Iran, they would use that to turn to their protesters and say, well, look, you want this democracy, and you're getting all these ideas from the US, but the US are attacking us, and now we have to defend ourselves. So that's only going to serve to turn those protesters who are anti-Iranian government. It's only going to serve to turn them back towards backing that Iranian government. I think that goes into it a little bit further here. What I just explained, it says tanker traffic from the Gulf, but it's still too early to know if it is destabilizing the regime, these protests, and how far the government could successfully appeal to national solidarity in the event of a crisis with the US and seek to demonize demonstrators as the proxies of foreign powers. It says here, vocal and irrepressible popular dissent will weaken the Iranian regime, but in other respects it is stronger than it was during the last near war. The price of oil and gas is high, and the stoppage of supplies from the Gulf or oil states, on top of the loss from those from Russia, would have a crippling effect on the world economy. So it says here, the vocal and irrepressible popular dissent will weaken that Iranian regime. All these protests that are going on are weakening the regime internally. If America and Israel attack them, they will use that to say to their protesters, look, this is your democracy kings. We're going to have to kick them in the arse, and you better fix up or shut up. And people will eventually back them for that. And what it's saying is, this whole situation is weakening the Iranian regime. But on the other hand, they're strengthened in this particular time here because the price of oil and gas is high. and the stoppage of supplies from the Gulf, on top of the losses from Russia, the losses of oil and gas flow and other things from the fact of what's going on with Russia, all this would have a crippling effect on the world economy. So, this is all going back to the MOTB, the fact that, if something were to develop in this particular area and the Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz, the mouth of the Gulf, this particular port, this particular area of traffic, should I say, if this were to be attacked, on top of the problems we're having at the minute with supply chains, this would have a massive crippling effect on the economy. We're already expecting the economy to crash because the elites are planning that, and they're pretty much telling us directly now through these WEF and so on and so forth. So, it's everything is coming together, as they say. And I've explained before that Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shai is the ultimate chess player. And so each piece is being moved, and you can see that not only is the third world being built up nicely, but now it links up with what's happening in the economic world. It says, is Iran is better than before, stopping tanker traffic from the Gulf by use of drones and missiles in large quantities, against which there is no totally effective anti-aircraft defense. And that's what I just explained about the fact that you can't send a heat-seeking missile after a drone because there's no heat. It's just this piece of plastic flowing through the air. It's cold because it's catching that breeze. Just like your radiator in your car, it's just catching that wind. So it's a cold object. You send a all black one out in the middle of the night. Nobody's going to spot it, and all it's got to do is travel to its target, hover 20 yards above it, let go of this explosive, and the building and even the drone probably will go up in smoke. But who cares? And so this is a real problem to the West, and this is another reason why Benjamin Netanyahu is ramping it up, because he's thinking, well, if you guys have got these drones, what happens if you want to use them against themselves, the small hats? You've all now just witnessed them being used in Ukraine. They've demolished the gas and electric supply by hitting certain locations. And so other countries are worried. Iran, as it says there, Iran are a drone superpower. When have you ever linked Iran with being some sort of superpower? But now they're a superpower in the world of drones, especially military drones. It says Western and Israeli leaders have long argued that Iranian possession of a nuclear weapon would alter the balance of power in the Middle East. This is true enough, although US intelligence reportedly believes that Iranian leadership has not yet decided if it wants to build a nuclear weapon. So far, the mere threat of doing so has served it as a useful bargaining chip in negotiating with the US and its allies, whom Iran sees as irredeemably hostile. And this is why people are worried. All these Western nations are worried about them having nuclear grade fuel, because building a missile isn't hard. It's a lot of metal and a lot of welding, and a blueprint, which is probably quite easy to get hold of. It's the fuel to run it. That's what you need. I gave if I gave you a rocket tomorrow, you take it home, you say, I've got a rocket, but what are you going to drive it with? What are you going to fly it with? You need the fuel. You need it continuously to keep flying it, or fly loads of them. And that's the thing. This is the whole issue, the fuel. Air superiority says, paradoxically, the balance of power in the Middle East and the rest of the world has changed, but not because of the acquisition of nuclear weapons, as shown by attacks in the Gulf in 2019 and in Ukraine since October. Middle-ranking states like Iran and Turkey, and even very poor ones like Yemen, now enjoy a much more level military playing field with powerful states like the US, Britain, or Israel. Air superiority no longer means control of the skies, which is a game-changing development. So this is all happening within the last couple of months. They're realizing this, and this is all being manifested to to actually be a reality in the last 2 months. So the Most High is turning it up. The year of the turn up, he's turning it up again on this particular situation here. But how far are those who decide on war or peace in the Middle East aware that the game really has changed? Gulf states like Saudi Arabia and UAE realized after the last US-Iran clashes under Trump that they were all too likely to be collateral damage in any American or Israeli attack on Iran. So Saudi Arabia and UAE have already realized the problem from 2019. They said, look, if you lot cause a problem, they're saying to America, they have deals with America. And that's what you see Biden going over there, trying to sweeten up the Saudi Arabian president. But the Saudi Arabian president is saying, look, if you lot go kicking down the door in Iran, they're gonna chuck it with us with these drones. So but you want to keep trading with us oil and so on and so forth. So this is Babylon the Great. It's heading to war and it's building up its issues with these nations round about. And ultimately, all nations around the earth are going to fire ICBMs upon Babylon the Great. It's going to be destroyed within 1 hour, and we can see it developing quite nicely. Like I say, all it takes, tonight, for example, all it takes is the US and Israel to agree to, yep, let's go in and kick down the door of Iran. And from that point onwards, Russia, who have alliances with Iran, would have to step in. And then, Saudi Arabia, which side are they going to go on with? Are they going to say to Iran, look, we're not really with America. We told them not to do this. Don't touch us. We'll help you out. We'll help you out with what you're doing. That could easily turn against America as well. So all these situations, this huge chessboard of 8 billion people, is primed for World War III. The only thing missing out of this whole article is the fact that Iran actually have a physical ICBM. But for all we know, they could have one built somewhere in secret, a physical missile or a bunch of them, and it just a matter of making the fuel for it. So how quick could that happen? That could get done in the next couple of months. Scientists get to work. You've already stepped it up 2 or 3 levels. You need that one final level, and we hit that sweet spot. So the Most High has this close as to World War III, and if he really wanted, he could set it off tonight. But yet, there are other prophecies to take place, and the Most High is, true to his word. It says Biden already has his hands full with the war in Ukraine. Israel should know that Iran would find some asymmetric way of striking back at it. As with Ukraine, the self-interest of all sides should prevent the crisis over Iran turning into a shooting war, but that does not mean it will happen. So, while the situation going on in Ukraine is happening, you're not likely to see the scenario take place down in Iran because the US are too busy to back Israel at the minute while they got their eye on Ukraine. And that's why I keep saying you can't have World War III until obviously the little hats get involved and America needs to come and back them. So every time people say Ukraine, World War III, no. America need to take their eye off that to have the concentration to feel, say, we're ready, let's go and do some damage. And the least of the flock will spark it off, and their big brother, Babylon the Great, will come running, and somebody at the other end of it is going to get it. But that somebody is going to have a friend in Russia. Further thoughts. Let's have a quick read. A study of political pundits appearing on US television discovered that they are more likely to be invited back by the TV station if they are wrong in their predictions than if they were right. One reason why the erroneous commentator is re-invited is because they are categorical in their opinion. They do not see the arrows pointing confusingly in different directions, something that real experts are all too prone to do. Another cause is that these same experts may express opinions that deviate radically from conventional media wisdom to the horror of TV interviews and discussion hosts. I suspect that it is the triumph of the pundit class on US television, which makes so much of it boring and uninformative. What makes the tedium so irritating is that it is the quite unnecessary, as Washington is bulging with real experts on almost every conceivable thing, but few of them get within sniffing distance of a TV studio where they might say alarming, unexpected, and interesting things. You're pretty much, they're saying you're not going to get this information in the media because the real experts, are kept behind closed doors. But then you have these people in the media that have these contrasting opinions, and they will bring them on TV every now and again to be contrasting and to create good TV. But ultimately, they get rubbished off because they get outweighed with a whole bunch of boring analysis of what's going on in this particular situation, and that's how they dumb down the situation, and they have people believing a lie, and they this, I'm showing you how this situation is escalating through this article, but when you watch the mainstream media, they're not showing you how this situation has escalated so much recently. And that's pretty much what they're trying to explain. It says, unfortunately, it is the same pundit class that decides which issues are important and which are not. Many of those who are speaking knowledgeably a month ago about the inevitable red wave and Republican tsunami in the midterm elections are now busy setting the news agenda for the coverage of the presidential election in 2024. This is what the medias have been doing over the last month. This is a tremendous waste of time since, as has been shown again and again in past presidential elections, too much will occur in the next 2 years for the results of the midterms to be a useful guide. The election of Benjamin Netanyahu as the next Israeli Prime Minister at the head of the most right-wing government in the history of Israel should be attracting more international interest. Netanyahu has normalized the presence in Israel's government of fanatical ethno-nationalists. Okay, so what they're saying is this is the type of thing you need to be seeing in the news, but they're not going to bring it out because they dumb it down. They get the odd guy to create a bit of controversy who's actually telling you the truth, but they outweigh him with a whole bunch of boring, nonsense information. Because proof of this is the appointment of the extreme right-wing leader Itamar Ben-Gvir. This is talking about Netanyahu's government, Israel being the most right-wing in the history of that nation since 1948. So proof of this, of the fact of this, is the appointment of the extreme right-wing leader Itamar Ben-Gvir as Israel's new national security minister in charge, among other responsibilities of the border police who operate on the West Bank. Once a follower of Meir Cain, the ultra-sectarian rabbi who wanted to strip Israeli Arabs of citizenship, Ben-Gvir used to keep in his house a picture of Baruch Goldstein, who massacred 29 Palestinians in a mosque in Hebron in 1994. 2 weeks before the election on the 1st of November, Ben-Gvir waved a handgun in East Jerusalem and encouraged police to open fire at Palestinian demonstrators. His appointment to that, Netanyahu's government has appalled many Israelis and American Jews. Rabbi Rick Jacobs, the head of America's Union for Reform Judaism, said on Sunday that giving Ben-Gvir the job was akin to appointing David Duke, one of the heads of the KKK, as Attorney General. As for what is happening on the West Bank, even before Ben-Gvir's appointment, here's an excellent piece of reporting, blah, blah, blah. So, they're just showing you that this government in Israel is getting, it's like they said, the most right-wing government ever. And it's now headed by Netanyahu, who's a firm believer on banging on the door of Babylon the Great and saying, let's go. And, a proof of that, they're pretty much saying, is the appointment of this particular man who, is known for certain things which appall in these little hats, these small hats. So, the Most High has all these chess pieces in place. So, yeah, I'm going to leave it right there. I mean, there's nothing else really more to go into in that particular article. But like I say, this does a good job of, allowing you to home in on the understanding of what's actually happening between Iran and Israel and the US and the Ukraine, and how it all is affecting each other, and how, one thing happening in the Ukraine is balancing the scales so that we don't tip towards what's happening in Iran. Eventually, that scale will lift, and or maybe it won't lift. Maybe something will kick off. Maybe Iran will kick something off. Maybe Iran, might get to that point where they actually have that fuel, that weapons grade fuel made, and that might then make one of the little hats to go in and kick the door down, and that might be what sparks the war. So either way, Babylon the Great have problems. They have issues. They all their allies are worried. They know what's coming next. They can see what's happening with Iran, and these leaders are preparing for war. America had just got their eye on Ukraine at the minute, but at the same time, if something kicks off, their hand is going to be forced. But ideally, they'd like the situation in Ukraine to settle down, and then they're more likely to listen to Benjamin Netanyahu and say, okay, yeah, we got time, we got troops, we can do this now. So I'll leave the link for the article in the description box. Actually, before I go, I'm going to just hit this one scripture. This is Zephaniah 3:8. It says, therefore wait ye upon me, saith the Lord, until the day that I rise up to the prey. For my determination is to gather the nations, that I may assemble the kingdoms, to pour upon them mine indignation, even all my fierce anger. For all the earth shall be devoured with the fire of my jealousy. And this is talking about World War III and the destruction. And ultimately, these nations are going to be gathered down in the Middle East, in the valley of Yehoshaphat, for this great judgment. And that's what it's discussing here, that I may assemble the kingdoms to pour upon them mine indignation, that righteous anger, even all my fierce anger, for all the earth shall be devoured with the fire of my jealousy. So I'm going to leave it right there. I hope that's edifying. And until next time, I'm going to say all praises to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Rakah, Kwadash, and Shalom.
I am not singing, darling, I blood clot, love you, and come shake my rask, and I'll swim the ocean and climb the mountain. See? And that not going to change me. See? Because I am going to kill the fuckery out there. And people is going to be in demand for the truth. People is sick and tired of hearing bomber clot, get down, shake your fucking booty. See? People is sick and tired of hearing, darling, I blood clot, love you. You turn on the fucking radio 24 bomber clot hours a day. You hear, darling, I love you. A man wouldn't sing to the almighty rascal. Him love him woman more than the creator who create the sun, the moon, and the bomber clot star. I sick and tired of hearing that bomber blood clot. See?